Wooburg. Rich was not lying. We've got one of each basic land here in Pat Cox's deck. Although, to call it a mana base of doom seems to me a little bit unfair, Pat. This deck has served you well, pretty well so far. I'm Brian David Marshall. We're doing a deck tech here with Pat Cox at the end of 5 rounds of day 1 of Pro Tour Avacyn Restored here in Barcelona, Spain. Pat, tell us a little bit about this deck. What's the story here for a deck that's being called Raisinbrand?
Yeah, that's a name came up with by David Scharfman. Actually, so Scharfman and this guy, John Cuvalier, Cuvie, and GP Lincoln champion Bronson Magnum, they're all Florida guys. I used to live in Florida. They were working together. And me and Oren Beasley were working with them kind of through Facebook. And they didn't really tell us about this deck until we got here. We had kind of asked if they had a reanimator deck. They didn't really say either way. And then we got here, they showed us this, and we didn't really have anything, and it seems to be working pretty well. So we reanimate both Griselbrand and Gisela in here, so it's probably the most powerful thing you can be doing in the format. Yeah,
well, let's talk through the deck a little bit and talk about some of the cards. Let's get a couple of things out of the way early. A little bit of removal. We've got Pillar of Flame, 2 copies.
Yeah, at one point that was Forge Devils, but just the Undying guys and all of that kind of made us move back to that.
1 copy of Devil's Play. Devil's Play is a card we've seen do a lot of hard work with Gisela, which you mentioned.
Right.
You get Gisela on the board, you attack for 10, you tap 8 mana, you flash back.
Yeah, I mean, it can finish them
Devil's
off.
Play, and they're dead in 1 turn.
It also kills things like Dungeon Geist or Fiend Hunter that are locking down your big guys.
Sure. But let's talk about the reanimation package. So the first thing you need to do is get cards into your graveyard, right?
Yeah, we have quite a few ways to do that.
So 4 copies of Faithless Looting.
Yep.
What does this card do for you?
Well, I mean, sometimes you naturally draw your reanimation targets or your Unburial Rites, which you can't usually cast. We only have 1 swamp, as you saw. So we need to be able to throw those cards away. And also, it kind of helps fix your mana, which, as you can see, is all 5 colors. So being able to draw lands and then throw away the cards you don't need is pretty helpful.
Speaking of drawing lands, one of my favorite cards in this block, Mulch.
Yeah, that's actually the best card draw spell in the deck because it just gets both the Unburial Rites and the large creature into the graveyard and helps you cast.
How many lands are you playing in this deck?
I think there are 23 now. We were wavering between 23 and 24, but we added Borderland Ranger, so I think 23.
So this is usually divination. How often is it Ancestral Recall?
Yeah, it's usually about 2 lands, but I mean it's kind of more than that because it's putting stuff in the graveyard that you're casting from there.
So it's opportunity.
Yeah.
You get 2 lands, you put a Gisela in, an Unburial Rites in your graveyard, and you've just drawn 4 cards.
Right. I haven't been quite that lucky, but
Hand in hand with Mulch, we've seen this in the Freak stacks. Tracker's Instinct.
Yeah, I mean that helps you put stuff in the yard. It's a little worse than Mulch because if you only hit 1 guy and it's a reanimation target, you have to take it. But we have some smaller creatures in the deck, basically so that we can cast this and take something else and put the thing we want in the graveyard.
Sure. And then, of course, the reanimation spell of choice, you decided not to go with Defy Death.
Nope.
And instead went with Unburial Rites.
Yeah. And like I said, we are normally casting that from the graveyard. We do have 1 swamp, and occasionally that does come up. But most of the time, we kind of just want to loot it into the graveyard, then cast it with white mana on turn 4, turn 3 if you're lucky.
So that's one of the cards you're really looking to get into your bin.
Yes.
Okay. So we got a handful of creatures that you can reanimate. We'll start with some of the less exciting ones. Avacyn's Pilgrim, giving you a white mana source.
Yeah, I mean, and it also kind of enables a nut draw of being able to reanimate something on turn 3.
Right. Borderland Ranger, fine man.
Yeah, I mean, it buys you time. It fixes your mana. Pretty good.
Huntmaster of the Fells, 2 Pro Tours running. This guy is doing hard work.
Yeah, this certainly isn't a Huntmaster deck. I mean, it's better in many other decks, but this can just buy you a lot of time, and sometimes you can reanimate if you have to.
I have to admit, it's kind of deceptive looking your deck because I've come over a couple times watching you play, and it looks like a Naya deck at times.
Yeah, that's later after sideboard.
But even beforehand, but Naya with Mulch.
Yeah.
Angel of Glory's Rise. A number of people are using this in combo reanimator decks,
right.
But you're really just kind of playing this for value.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's mostly just the 3 creatures you just saw were all humans, so it can return any of them.
So you get to return Pilgrim, Borderland Ranger, and Huntmaster of the Fells.
Sure. If you return even 1 Huntmaster, that's great. If you return 2, I mean, it's pretty hard to lose at that point.
Sure, and sometimes you get Borderland Ranger and you just draw a couple extra cards.
And I mean, unlike a lot of other decks, you actually want Huntmaster to die here. You're fine with blocking with it and then getting it back next turn. So.
Right. This card has done some big things this weekend. Gisela, Hero of Goldnight.
Yeah, I didn't know what that card did like 3 days ago, but now I certainly know. It attacks for 10. So.
Yeah, attacks for 10. That's exactly what it says on the card. And then this is a card we weren't sure if people were going to play this or not. I didn't think pro players could resist the opportunity to necro for 7, and I'm glad you proved me correct. But Griselbrand,
yeah, I mean,
the man who puts the brand in Raisin Brand.
Yeah, I mean this guy is pretty great. Like, if you draw 7 immediately, assuming you're at a healthy life total, you can then discard more things to reanimate next turn. So it kind of sets everything up for you, even if they do kill it. And also just against aggro decks, assuming he lives, it's pretty hard for them to win at that point.
Is it remotely possible for you to cast this guy in this deck?
No, we have 1 swamp. It's actually impossible to cast.
Okay. And then talking about the lands, 4 Evolving Wilds, 4 Clifftop Retreats. Why did you decide to go with the Clifftop Retreat as your dual land of choice?
I mean, basically because we have quite a few red cards, as you can see. Also, we have a couple double white cards.
Right.
And we didn't want to, we could have run maybe a few more non-basics, but we didn't really want our lands coming to play tapped.
Right.
So, I mean, many turns I just play this turn 1 tapped.
Sure, so you end up having 8 red sources and 6 white sources, not counting the Pilgrims.
Right.
And then 1 island, 1 swamp, 2 plains, and 7 forests for your base green deck.
I mean, the island and the swamp are just occasionally you'll have Unburial Rites in your hand, or you'll want to flash Backtracker's Instincts. You're not usually fetching them out early or anything, but it's nice to have access to them.
So, I mean, one of the things that I think scared a lot of people off from reanimating a Griselbrand is the existence of Zealous Conscripts.
Right.
Why has it been okay for you guys to play this deck and to reanimate a Griselbrand, or reanimate a Gisela for that point? It's almost as fatal to reanimate a Gisela into a Zealous Conscript.
I mean, that's very true. Like, we were worried about Zealous Conscripts. We didn't really expect a lot in main decks. So in our sideboard, we originally had some Ranger's Guiles to kind of protect him. It's a pretty big blowout if they let the guy come into play thinking they're going to steal it and kill you, and then you're just like, nope. But instead, we actually ended up playing a Transformational Sideboard that doesn't really, Conscript doesn't do anything against it. They can steal pretty small guys like Huntmaster or whatever, but we don't have any big guys they're going to take from us.
So you would take out your Griselbrands, and you would take out your Giselas? And
yes. Okay.
And so let's talk a little bit about the sideboard. Sigarda, Host of Heavens.
Yeah, I mean, that's the main reason we're playing that card is because it can't be conscripted, but also it's just pretty good against, there's a lot of 3-color mid-range type decks, and they can't really deal with this card. They basically need a Blasphemous Act or a Terminus. So just slamming that guy into play turn 4 or 5 is often enough. And
it's conceivable you can get it into play on turn 3 off of 2.
I'm not that lucky again, but maybe. I guess we saw Frank do it. So.
Yeah. 3 Restoration Angels?
I mean, that's just kind of a value card. I guess I should preface this by we take out all the reanimation stuff when we're sideboarding, because we just expect people to side in Grafdigger's Cage and that kind of thing. So we basically just turned into one of the mid-range decks I was kind of just making fun of, the Naya decks, and give them some dead cards and stuff they're not expecting. And it's been working pretty well so far. I'm basically playing 2 different decks this Pro Tour. So.
Sure. How has Angelic Overseer been treating you?
It's pretty good. I mean, it's basically another Sigarda, it just big guy.
Just another big hex-proof dude. 2 Tree of Redemption.
That comes in against Boros. The mid-range decks, that's 1 card that doesn't come in there. But
so then a couple of cards. We got 1 more Pillar of Flame.
Yeah, I mean, basically just we want to be able to kill anyone's early drop so we can kind of stall the game to the point where we get ahead.
2 Bonfire of the Damned. I assume that comes in when you become a mid-range deck.
Yeah, that always comes in. I mean, I guess there is a conceivable that we wouldn't be becoming a mid-range deck if we thought they didn't have any hate, but I've been siding into it every time. Actually, everyone else is playing 3, but they were sold out, so I only played 2. So that's why I have a Blasphemous Act in there.
Okay, so yeah, that explains that. 1 Blasphemous Act.
I mean, it's actually not terrible because it can kill some things that Bonfire can't kill. There is a blue-green deck that has Splinter Fright and all those giant guys, and also kills Sigarda.
Right, hard to kill Sigarda with a Bonfire of the Damned.
Yeah.
Unless you're miracling it. A second copy of Devil's Play.
Yeah, I mean, that's mostly just to kill creatures or to kill planeswalkers.
And a lovely Plains.
Yeah, that was the only planes I had the vendor when I told Sharpman to go get me a planes. So,
but
actually nice. It works pretty well because then I know which one to take out.
So why the 25th land?
I mean, we're siding in Sigarda and just generally more expensive spells, and we are taking out Mulch a lot of the time, or at least some number of Mulches. Like, we take out Looting for sure, which would normally kind of smooth our draws, and some number of Mulches. So basically, we just want to be able to cast our big spells, because also, if they don't have conscripts, we can leave Gisela in, because we can actually cast it.
Right.
So we just want to be able to get to a lot of mana to cast all these things.
Sure. So you're 4-1 with the deck so far.
Yeah.
And what have your matchups been like going through the tournament? Give people an idea of what it looks like.
I played Boros and I actually lost game 1, but then won with this other deck, my sideboard deck. But I played against Jund. I narrowly lost to that.
So that's your one loss?
Yeah. I just played against Rug a minute ago against Jeremy Neiman, and that was not particularly close. I kind of got him with the transformational thing. Like, he showed me Memory's Journey in his hand at the end of the game.
Yeah, he was sitting on that the whole game.
Yeah. Let's see what else did I play
And if you walk by that match, again, if you walk by that match towards the back end of game 2, was that game 3?
That was game 2.
Game 2. It does not look like you're playing a Reanimator. It was like, oh, you should go check out Pat Cox's Reanimator deck. And I'm like, okay. All right, I see 2 Huntmasters in play. You know, I saw a Borderland Ranger. And, you know, it didn't look anything.
Right, yeah, I mean,
like a Reanimator deck at all.
I mean, it's not after that game. Like, we side in all 15 cards a lot of the time. I think I maybe sided in 13 or so that game. But so we make it not a Reanimation deck. You know, it's like I'm playing Reanimation / Naya in this tournament.
How do you like this deck, porting it over to Standard as we move into a new Standard format between now and the fall?
Well, actually, the way Kubi came up with this deck was he looked at Frights and kind of ported it the other direction. So, I mean, it's kind of already a deck.
Right. So this is definitely something you could tinker around with, and
yeah, I mean, you just have better mana and better animation targets.
And we've seen a couple versions of the deck using sort of comboing the Angel of Glory's Rise. So there's a lot of different ways you could take it. Hopefully you'll try this deck out on Magic Online and some of the block queues, and or you know, maybe at your Friday Night Magic. For Pat Cox at 4-1, heading into the draft rounds. This is Brian David Marshall, the Pro Tour historian, signing off from the deck desk.